Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my most beloved brothers and sisters. It is said that we'll truly understand the meaning of life at the time of our death. But there are many fortunate amongst us who look at their mortality, they look at how they spend the time, and they really want to lead a life that is meaningful, purposeful, and balanced. Nizam, I want to come to you first, Nizam. When we speak about a lifestyle audit, what comes to your mind?
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Idris, what comes to my mind is to do some self-reflection, to do like an audit on how we're living, to say that, are we living a good quality of life? Is there a balance between the wheel of life, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, relational, whether it be with family or friends, in terms of career, in terms of giving back to the community, serving. So we all we reflect and say, are we living a fulfilled life? Is it a life worth living? Are we living in terms of what we really value? Is there a balance between work? Is there work-life balance? So if you look at it, if you look at, are we living our values?
Yeah.
Are we living what is important to us? And it's doing a health check. It's checking, and it's stepping back aside and saying, yeah, it makes sense, or these are the changes I want to make. These are different choices, and looking at how we use our resources, whether it be time, our health, our wealth, and our energy, where we're putting our energy.
Jazakumullah, Nizam, for a very comprehensive interpretation of it. Zara, I want to, Nizam spoke about self-reflection. Sure. That is important. But is that enough? What about getting feedback from people around you, their own? For example, through self-reflection, you may have either a diminished self, or you may think too highly of yourself in terms of who you are. People around you, to what extent it's important to get feedback from people that you work with, your family, so on and so forth?
Assalamu alaikum. It's important to check in. I think often to check in with where your heart is and then in relation to your relationships. But as you were asking the question, a thought came to mind where we live in a social media prevalent society. And I wonder often if we look at checking in to validate who we are more than where we are, and if we're happy with who we are and what we are achieving.
So the whole issue about knowing where we are. Hussein, in terms of that, how do you ascertain that in terms of where we are? Surely to ascertain that you need to have some goals to look at where you are in the scheme of things,
Jazakallah, thank you, Idris. So yeah, I think, Nizam made some excellent points, particularly around the issue of reflection. For me, a lifestyle audit is about having a helicopter view of our life, where we are. Are we on track? Because so often we find ourselves lost. People are in pain. I mean, we've all been down that road where we feel overwhelmed with life. We don't know whether we are prioritizing one thing above the other, and if that's really, we're living our core values, as was just alluded to. I'll never forget, one of the most profound experiences I've had was visiting the cave of Hira when I went for Hajj. I made a point of going up there because, throughout madrasa and all the years of education, we knew that the Prophet ﷺ went up there, and what did he do when he went up to the cave of Hira? He reflected. And he would go there very often to reflect. So that was very powerful for me when I went there and just sat in that cave and just reflected. And we don't have to have a cave, or we can be in our bedroom, it can be on the musalla, it could be wherever. But that reflection for me is a starting point to that lifestyle audit we talk about.
Okay. If you look at reflection, what kind of questions should we ask ourselves, Nizam?
The first would be how grateful we are. We'll ask the question, hey, look at how blessed we are.
Okay, just stop there for a moment. I think it's a very important point that you raise about how grateful am I. Zara, how would you, why do you think it's so important,
I think gratitude would allow you to see what you're focusing on. And if you feel gratitude in your life, you may come to a conclusion that what I'm focused on is serving me well, and I am achieving or feeling successful in that. And if my focus has shifted in spaces where I'm ungrateful or I'm feeling lack thereof, I'll feel discernment within myself. So we look to shift the focus into what makes us feel gratitude, in hopes that it will fulfill us and bring us onto the path of purpose. And in that sense, if you had to look at how I'm auditing my life, I would imagine then that you're in the positive.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted. right.
So it's being grateful, looking at where we are blessed, because it's rather looking at what we have than what we don't have. And then say, right, let's look at what opportunities there are, what choices we have to make differently. And then we ask the question, say, right, have a positive intent of having a positive prayer to say, oh Allah, bless me with this. But most important is when you're grateful and and being persistent, never giving up. Because even if we don't have something, and we do an audit and we say, this is what we have and that's what we are blessed with, okay, now ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, to build the capacity, to get the skills and the capacity to go out and seek what we're looking for, to fulfill our values and our beliefs.
Okay, Hussein, the Nizam mentioned a few points about positive intent and look at the choices that we have. You find that this has been my experience with people. You talk to people, many of them are despondent, they've given up hope, and they themselves have not realized the different choices they have and what they need to be thankful for. For example, just the other day we showed a group of people in a workshop of this lady, Jessica Cox from America, who has no arms, but she's a certified pilot. And then we showed them the 5-minute clip, then asked each one of them, what is your excuse? What is holding you back? So do you see also, for example, in terms of what Nizam is saying, that once you are able to recognize the choices you make, then you are able to also unleash your potential?
Absolutely. I mean, that's so true. I think what Nizam is saying makes a lot of sense, and I would take it a step further and also talk about your values. He mentioned values as well. So for me, that, before we even get to what our core, in the wheel of life, when we put all the important core aspects of our life together, it's what's important to us. And that's why is that important? Is because it allows us to make those choices you talk about, the decisions. So if somebody came to me and offered me a job tomorrow in London, and it meant I had to stay away from my family for months on end, the choice is very easy because for me, family is a priority. But if work and career was a priority and that was the value that was important to me, then it's also an easy choice because then I would go there. So, when we identify what our key values are in life and what's important to us, principally and otherwise, then the decisions and the choices we have to make become easier as well.
So there we have it, my beloved brothers and sisters, that when you're looking at your lifestyle is asking yourself many questions, reflecting, being grateful, being positive, and it is in the end, often people say, why did you do this? I just did it. No, my brothers. Values drive what you do. And inshallah, in the next segment, we're going to explore this wonderful topic further. And hopefully, all of us will say, my gosh, now I know what I need to do to reflect on my own life.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the first segment, we spoke about what is a lifestyle audit. Now, the next question, Nizam, you're so close to me, I'm going to ask you first. Right? Normally, the kids sit in front, we don't trouble them, But anyway, it's different here. Why should one do a lifestyle?
I think it's to check if we are feeling fulfilled. Is there something niggling in us that we don't feel good about? Because if you're feeling fulfilled, then you just say, look, you're carrying on the way we've done things in the past. But it's also checking in and saying, listen, man, are we in the comfort zone? Because you want to make sure that we're always striving and growing and developing. And as human beings, we always want to grow and develop and go to the next level. So if we're just in a comfort zone and we're doing everything, we're doing every day the same old routine, we want to just check in and say, you know what, are we missing something? Is there a bigger opportunity? Are we living spiritually? Are we really, praying on namaz with what they call it, total concentration? And, are we living the life which, following the Prophet's Sunnah? Yeah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So Nizam, these are well said, right? Now the question is, Zara, in terms of doing a lifestyle audit, do we do it once a year? Do you do it when you're going through some trauma? When should one do this kind of lifestyle? Because often what happens, when you meet people, they're too busy, rushing from pillar to post. And suddenly they're in the twilight years of their life and they have a whole range of regrets,
Suddenly the kids are all grown up.
Yeah.
I'd say that you'd have to check in as often as possible because your feelings do change. You can feel differently about what career meant for you 10 years ago to what it means for you now. And maybe 10 years ago you wanted a small family, now you want a big family, etc. So to check in with exactly where I am now, I would say to check in as often as possible, to reflect as often as possible. You could probably create guidelines about when and how to reflect within your life. So health would be a great aspect to look at because your body is supporting you in everything that you do. And then to look at career because maybe financial security. And then to look at family because of quality time and what purpose the family brings to you. So to check in with that. And as time goes on, when we do look back and suddenly realize, oh, the kids have grown up, what happened to that time? We could say that we actually participated in this time and not looking back and wishing we were there more or we were lacking or we had hoped to have done more. Instead we could say, okay, in reflection, perhaps there was a period in the time that I see there that maybe I was misled, maybe there was lack in my life, maybe there my spirituality, my connection, my this. And in reflection, my audit allows me to look at the spaces of lack and hopefully find ways that I could improve so that I don't go forward in life repeating the same thing over.
Whilst you were speaking, I came across this and I would like you to explore this. People say there's a big difference between success and significance. Sometimes you could be so skewed towards, say, your business and you're doing exceptionally well. Very, very busy, very, very wealthy and so on and so forth. And people look up to you in terms of your business acumen. But yet your family, all of them are crying out, right? And so someone said it quite nicely. They said, a person of success has a beautiful CV, but a person of significance leaves a legacy. So the difference, I think the idea of looking at a balanced lifestyle is to be more a person of significance than one of success. I don't know, Hussein, what do you think?
Absolutely spot on. And don't we hear so often these days wealthy people, billionaires, actors and actresses who are making all the money in the world but are still unhappy and commit suicide and depressed, Now depression is probably one of the leading diseases, as they call it, worldwide. And why is that? It's because people are unhappy, they're in pain, So yes, we're all striving towards being fulfilled. That's the ideal. I think at the same time, there are a lot of people out there who are in pain. And we all go through that at different stages in our life. And I think we've all been there. We can all kind of understand, it resonates with all of us, that you go through periods when you are lost and you're in pain and you just don't know which way to turn. But coming back to what Zahra was saying is that it's really important to continue to do this all the time. And if I have to use a health analogy, isn't it, like people who smoke, when do they really stop smoking? Most people. It's when the guy ends up in hospital and he's half dead and then you decide to stop smoking. So sometimes people need a little bit of a shock. So very often we'll find that that's really when there's an awakening. But if we can be proactive and do it ahead of time and really take charge and control of our life, then we'll find that we can, it's almost, prevention is better than cure type of situation.
No, I think it's well said because I think there are so many lessons to be gleaned from people around us, younger people suddenly dying, they have regrets, or look at people that are old who share their regrets. We are mortal human beings and we could die at any particular time, right? And just a moment, a light-hearted moment, you spoke about these billionaires, killing themselves, we don't want them to do that. They could give us their wealth. We take off the burden. He said, brother, I don't kill yourself. Give me the money. Nizam, it's a very important thing. I remember, and I often share this incident. I met someone there in Medina, and his first wife passed away. And he was there with his second wife, and he knows the things that we are involved with in the community. He said, Idris, you know what? I have a big regret. He said, what? He said, I never told my first wife how much I love her. I never showed her gratitude, And that's the point, isn't it, Nizam? The point of being present, isn't it?
Right, so, you were talking about being present, right? When you're present, you're in that moment, in that magical moment where everything, you're in a flow state. And that's the best time to be present is when you're grateful and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings and the gifts that He's blessed us with. The issue is what happens, why we lose the moment, regretting the past, and we go into that sad state. Or we could be fearing the future and worrying about what could happen. So the best moment is being there in the moment, like when we're making namaz, we're in the moment, we're praying, we thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the gifts and all our blessings. And I think that is where we get where magic happens. When we're constantly in gratitude and looking at what's working instead of what's not working.
Zara, why is it that most people are not present?
Because of what they're focusing on. Probably if they're able to focus on what's fulfilling and what draws love into their lives, I think they'll know better how to be present in the experience. But if they're focused on lack thereof, get caught up with all the reasons why I don't have what I'm looking to achieve. But there is something I wanted to bring our attention to, just thinking of, while we were chatting, I thought, well, when in my life have I done a lifestyle audit? Considered to be quite young. But funny enough, I remembered, as you said earlier, if you had to think back, if you found yourself on your deathbed and you had to look back on your life, and if you look back in reflection, how would you feel? And I remembered now that it's a few years ago that I asked myself this question, and I probably asked from a fear state, not from a state of love. And I noticed at the time that I was quite fearful of where I was in my life, and I immediately knew that something had to change. And if I really look back at it in this conversation, I realized that ever since contemplating what I had achieved or not achieved by then in my life, I immediately started making changes. I actually knew, I had clarity with where I wanted to go, which is why I'd imagine the lifestyle audit is so important, because 6 years ago to where I am now, I could be on a very different path.
I can see it from your, the emotion. And it's so true, isn't it? And I think, it's an important message for all of us, not to be arrogant, to be aloof. We need to stop on our tracks. That's why we're told by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam to die before your death, is to reflect before that happens. So I'm glad you did it, otherwise you won't be sitting here,
I
right?
wouldn't be. I'd be somewhere very
Ummah would have missed out. Hussein, your final thought regarding the idea of being present?
Yeah, I think it's important for me. I mean, there's another point I wanted to bring is the issue of congruence and conflict. So, very often we think we're happy, so we kind of park all these things one side, but internally there's a lot of conflict going on. And there's, so we grow up with a set of beliefs, and then a decision comes and I need to do something, but it's satisfying me now, but there's all this conflict going on internally. And it makes us unhappy, and it really causes it kind of overflows in our life. So it's really important, when we do something, to kind of, look at what our core values are, are they congruent with the way we're living our lives, where we're spending our time, and then, as you say, to be present in that moment, whether it's with family, and when we're there, how often don't we find ourselves on our cell phones or watching TV, but we say we're at home, but we're really not there, you know.
Yes, my brothers and sisters, I hope when you're watching us, you are present. No, not the social media. Look at us. Be present. In that way, hopefully, there may be some things that our guests are saying that can resonate with you. We'll be back immediately after this.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the first two segments, we spoke about what is a lifestyle audit. In the second segment, we spoke about why we should do a lifestyle audit. And now, on a more practical level, how should we go about doing it? Nizam?
So I think we need to just step back and say, why are we here on earth? What is the purpose of our creation? Why Allah created us? And what is our role we want to play? And also, that may be one very important question. Second thing is, where are we going? What is our vision? What we want to achieve? What we want to give back? The third one will be the way we will operate as individuals. We got the guiding principles from the Quran and the Sunnah, but we might create some of our own ways of doing things. We might be creating certain belief systems about our own life, whether life is good, life is a breeze, or are we going to ask the question, life is difficult? So we want to look at framing things in a positive, optimistic way. And then obviously we want to set up certain goals for the different areas of our life. Then we want to say to ourselves, what is the strategy to realize our goals? So those are the kind of things we would do practically and write them down and reflect all the time. Are we going in that direction? So then make decisions. What is the decision? What are we going to do? By when? And measure. Set timelines. And for every 6 months, whether it be, sit back and reflect. Did we achieve what we set out to do? And every so often, whether it's whether it's annually or 6 monthly, we need to just check. Yeah, those are a few of the things.
No, I think it's valid points. I think the first point that you raise is to align everything to your purpose. Why are we born here?
Correct.
And that's a fundamental thing, right? In terms of what Nizam has said or anything else you want to add, do you think we're going to consciously do this? Do you think we're going to set aside with pen and paper? That's the impression I get Nizam is indicating. Or sit aside, or just walking one day, reflecting on your life. But how should you commit yourself? One of the important critical things is this: people sometimes know I need to change after reflection, but they do not change,
Not to be afraid to ask for support. I think that's also very important. There are people that specialize in supporting others, and in that, to find someone that you could really trust with in a space when you might not trust yourself, to put trust somewhere else for a temporary piece of moments in time, just to allow you to refuel. I heard you say earlier about core belief systems. If I reflect or take it back to my personal story, where we were very young when we first experienced trauma and tragedy, and having experienced that trauma at such a young age, it probably put my life on hold for a long period of time. And within that period of time, I was confused. I didn't know my purpose. I didn't know why I was here. I didn't know if Allah can take us so quickly, then why am I still here? Those were my questions. And it took a very long time for me to sit back and actually come to a space where I too am important. I came here with destiny. I came here with reason and purpose. And when those questions were first offered to me by someone that was giving me support, a mentor, someone I truly believe is my mentor now, When those questions were first proposed to me, I had no answers. And my work then was to go and find out, who am I? And that has brought me to where I am now. And the life audit and the constant checking in allows me to come back to, am I living on purpose? Do I feel fulfilled right now? And it's not always, I'm not always right. I'm not always feeling fulfilled. And then that's kind of when I know to come back to what really works well in my life. Because when things work well, alhamdulillah, just doors open around you. When they don't, you're just stuck. You don't see it in relationships, you don't see it in work, you don't see it in food, you don't see it in anything. And when you do allow yourself to look at life through abundance and prosperity, everything is there for you. But it was always there for you. It's just that you couldn't see it. Your perception of life was clouded by your judgment of yourself, you criticizing yourself, instead of loving yourself, even through the hardest times. Because we're always loved. We're here to be loved and to give love.
You see, from what both of you have indicated, it's about doing it consciously, is through reflection, and to get a mentor, someone that can advise you, someone that you can trust. And I know psychologically it is often said that revealing is healing. Sometimes what we tend to do, we keep our problems with us and we implode. And we exaggerate the problem because it's like a vicious cycle. But once you take it out, you pray to Allah, you feel much better.
Absolutely.
Hussein, in terms of what Zara and Nizam have said, and in terms of your own understanding about how should we do this, what is your response?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing is, acceptance. So, a lot of the type of incidences, things we encounter, challenges we encounter on a day-to-day basis, can we accept them, embrace them, and then you flow almost with it, as opposed to always trying to resist. So that's the one thing for me I've learned. Always a rebel, growing up fighting and challenging different things in life and questioning why. And yes, it's always important to question, especially when you have principle, but also important to accept, embrace, and then to go with the flow. But that is just a general attitude thing. When it comes to the issue of the lifestyle audit, I think starting with your core values, for me, that's a starting point. Once you start with your core values, then we can move into what are the important components of my life, because the values will determine what are the important components. So if one of my values is honesty, integrity, happiness, I want to be happy in my life, I know that's what I want, and I'm going to strive towards that. Then is career going to bring me happiness, or is family going to bring me happiness? And that will then determine where I spend bulk of my energy, my time, my investments, everything else will be determined by then.
Yes, my beloved brothers and sisters, it's quite clear from our panelists that you've got to consciously do this. You need to ask questions. You may need to make a note of it. You need to ask yourself, why am I born? I remember coming across the title of this book, and I read this book, and I'm sure you're also familiar with the book. It is entitled, Who Will Cry When You Die? The subtitle is, lead your life in such a way that when you were born, you cried and people were smiling. That when you die, you are smiling and people around you are crying. We'll be back immediately after this break.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the break, I was present. Because I was present, an idea came to mind regarding this. There was a young boy who was drowning, and an elderly person saved his life. And the young boy was so indebted to him, and he said to him, I do not know how to thank you. So the elderly person, who was a very wise man, thought about it. He said to him, young boy, I hope one day when you are much older, when you reflect on what happened today, you can say with conviction that my life was worth saving. Wow. And I thought it was a very, very powerful thing, because a lot of people live like zombies, mechanical lives, no one benefits from the busyness, no one benefits from them. So I think at this juncture, in terms of the viewers, what practical things, not that it was not practical or it was esoteric or theoretical, what practical things that we can share with them that they can say, my gosh, these 3 things, these 4 things, these 5 things I'm going to do?
I mean, the one is after every namaz. Practically, one could just sit back and just reflect. Let's say if we're making Zohar namaz, then you can say, what have we done between Fajr and Zohar?
Yes.
And just reflect back. I mean, and just say to yourself, have I lived my purpose? Have I added more value? Have I been grateful? Ask a few positive, good, empowering questions. I mean, a story, based on what you were saying, comes to my mind that when Sheikh Abdul Qadir was given the news that his ship sank, what happened? He said, they came and told him the ship sank, his ship sank, so he said, Alhamdulillah. He checked in and he said to himself, Alhamdulillah. Then the news came back and he said that it wasn't his ship, it was some other ship. And he also said Alhamdulillah. And what happened? At that point, somebody asked him, why did you say Alhamdulillah in both cases? He was checking his state. That did he go into sadness when the ship was, when he got the news that the ship was, the ship sank? He did not get sad, and neither was he happy. He had a baseline state. Doesn't matter, he was never in an emotional roller coaster. It didn't matter what happened in his life, it was always Alhamdulillah. And I think saying Alhamdulillah to whatever happens to us in our lives is one very practical way of living.
I think it's a very critical point. The idea on a day-to-day between your salah, reflecting, what have I really done? Because we are told as believers, no 2 days are the same. The issue of Abdul Qadir Jailani is such a powerful story. It reminds us in the end that Allah is indeed control of everything. Sarah?
I really enjoyed your point, and I think also to draw attention to our feelings, because to be able to say shukr, alhamdulillah, but to also understand what drives our feelings, to bring us to that balanced state or a non-attachment state, if that might be it. So to understand what drives your sadness, where it comes from, and then maybe the impact it has, or your happiness and how to cultivate happiness in your life. I will come back to the point of, I think, allow yourself to feel brave enough to talk about who and what is happening within your heart. If you are brave enough to talk about what is happening within your heart, you open yourself up to solutions that will come to you. It doesn't have to be verbal solutions, they'll come to you. It's clarity that you're looking for most of all, clarity so that you can make the decisions about whatever it is, that can lead to contentment. I often will remind myself, I'll ask myself, I check in to say, do I feel as if I have inner peace? And I wondered, am I so young to be wondering if I should look for inner peace? But I thought, let me start sooner rather than later. And if I start now, then inshallah one day I'll understand what that feeling is. And I think that would be one of the ways. I do check in. I have a support system that I go to. In my low times and my high times, I celebrate. I celebrate because before I never knew how to celebrate. And I also speak when I'm not certain. I speak.
I think it's important. I think sometimes, as we said earlier on, that when people are going through challenges, we are told with every heartache there is ease. And this is the nature of life. You have a summer, spring, all the different weather. There's a pattern of life. And the thing is, from the trauma that you have gone through, I think you are living that life of fulfillment, which is quite fundamental. Hussein, in terms of the advice that you like to share with the viewers?
It is, I think, what has worked for me and what for me I found has just got me into a space where I find myself on track is that for me every morning, Nizam speaks about every salah, it's a fantastic time. But for me every morning works wonderfully. I wake up early every morning at 5, I get outside on the grass, I take off my shoes, sit there and just reflect. And for me that is almost like, I won't say my happy time or happy space, but it's a time when I can sit back, look at what happened yesterday, reflect on what's ahead of me, and just put everything together. And then you listen to the birds, and But it's so important to do that, to find a time every day. And if each one of us can find that time and do that, then I think it goes a long way towards your fulfillment and what I think all striving for.
Yeah, again. Whilst you are talking, this is the barakah. When you sit in the group, Allah gives you answers, right? there are two things that I try to do, I mean, for whatever is worth. If I'm going through any kind of challenge, and my own mind, in my limited, finite, cognitive mind, I can't find a solution, I lift up my hand and say, Ya Allah, you know what I'm going through. I'm leaving the matter with you. You feel relieved like you got the solution. And Allah will give you the solution. That's one aspect. The second important aspect, and I think this is fundamental, is the idea that, you got to be surrounded with people that are positive, that are reminding you. Because often many of us suffer fools very easily. We allow people to crawl underneath the skin, their opinions about you, whether they greeted you or not. You're awake at night worrying about it, So the whole idea is not that to be insensitive or to be detached from people. I think, do you not think, Nizam, we suffer fools very easily. We allow little things to consume us, and as a result, we get so distracted by it, we forget why we are here on this earth.
Yeah, look, we get into that engine room.
Yeah.
We start getting into the detail and whatever. And if we step back and say, what is our destiny? Why we created? And we look back and we say to ourselves, you know what? There's an opportunity here. There is an opportunity. The way I'm going to look at things, I'm going to reframe them. Look at the language we use. Because many a times we make some very difficult rules for ourselves that, if you look at from a health perspective, you say to yourself, you know what, I need this weight, I need this, I need, my pulse must be so and so, and only if my BMI is X, Y, and Z, that's when everything is hunky-dory. No, just deal with everything daily, but take small steps. Every day, one step, because we're only going to reflect the possibility when you were saying about pain, and there's the pain and pleasure part. So you look at it and you say, right, when I'm in pain, I'm going to reflect. When I'm in pleasure, I'm not going into the comfort zone. In all states, I will go back and do a bit of reflection, and I think that's critical.
Yeah. In fact, we are reminded from an Islamic perspective, when things are going well, you show gratitude.
Exactly.
When things are not going well, you show patience, and you're rewarded for that.
Persist.
You persist, and you're rewarded for that, right? Because it's not the end of the road, but the bend in the road, unless you fail to take the bend. Sarah?
Was it the journey?
Journey, yeah.
Gee. Where could I pick up from here?
No. Just a final thought.
I really enjoyed Nizam's point about the ship sinking in that. So for me, that was a very powerful message. And I think from my perspective, I look at, because I'm involved with cricket and I coach cricket and I talk to a lot of cricketers, I look at one of the key elements, and you have batting in cricket is a real roller coaster, because you fail more than you succeed. And you don't get many things in life where you fail more than you succeed. So you find these cricketers on an emotional roller coaster. 1 minute you score 100, then South Africa get bowled out for 70, and then you're down in the dumps and people get annoyed. So you're up and down all the time. So it's so important to stay grounded, but also to let go, have the ability to let go, as you say, just leave it in Allah's hands and say, listen, I've done my work, I've prepared. It's like when you walk into an examination room, once you've done the preparation, you just let go, and it takes the weight off your shoulders, it takes the pressure off, and you just release everything. Hashim Amla is a good friend of mine, so I can, and I often say to youngsters I coach, I said, try and keep an eye on him after he's batted, and see if it's possible, if you can distinguish whether he scored 100 or scored a naught. And very often you can't tell the difference, because he's, I think, reached that state where he's just lets go. And you just, as Nizam said, Alhamdulillah, got 100, tomorrow you get a naught, Alhamdulillah, it's fine, and things will move on.
Alhamdulillah, you would agree with me that the discussions were thorough, and it's so fundamental for all of us to stop where we are, to ask ourselves, where are we going to? And each one of us, inshallah, would leave a legacy. What I want for you and for myself, that none of us have any regrets when you are much older in our life. You have an opportunity, each one of us, to leave a true legacy. May Allah bless you, look after you, and protect you. And remember this, If you do not change in the next 48 hours, it's unlikely you're going to change. A believer changes immediately. Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.